Hello everybody. This is a video with comic books that I got that were signed by somebody connected with them. Start off with Azrael, Dark Knights, DC comic. He was a replacement for Batman, I think. I don't know. I'm not really up on what they were doing then, but this was signed by the writer Denny O'Neil. Here's the comic book cover. And I'm trying to get to there's the signature. Denny O'Neil, if you're into Denny O'Neil, if you're into the older comics, was the one who did the Hard Traveling Heroes, I think it was later called, maybe called that then, where Green Lantern and Green Arrow were traveling around the country and getting involved in what were the social issues of its time. That was in 1971, 72, something like that. And this one is an Uncanny X-Men from around 19. Excuse me, I gotta. 82, and it was signed by artist Dave Cockrum, who drew the comic book. And he also signed this on the inside. This is an issue of The Flash, and it was signed by Mark Waid, the writer. Now, Mark Waid, I don't know how familiar you are with comics. There's the signature, I think. There. Yeah, it's with the comics, but he wrote the one of them that was got kind of famous, Kingdom Come, and the same time I saw him and got that signed, I got these signed by him. It's hard to tell with the lighting, but I got 4 issues of it that he signed in the same place. Here, start this over, because the covers, Alex Ross drew some great covers. I don't want to rush through too much. Try this. That's a good. That came out pretty good. We're showing the signature. In all 4 comics, he signed them on that spot. Bernie Wrightson. I didn't get this done. Let's see. It's hard to make out with the video quality. Hopefully, but there it is. I didn't get this done, but I did buy that at the convention. Here's one I didn't. Here's one that's kind of interesting. Mr. T went to the comic book store that I was buying comic books at, and he signed this for the store. It's an issue of Mr. T and the T-Force. the first issue, and I bought it from them. They put it for sale, and I got it for something like $5, and it comes with the green foil trading card, which I still have, which it had. Here's a comic book that was drawn by Don Rosa. He did a lot of the Duck comics for Disney at some point. I don't know if he still does or not. Kind of the standard Donald Duck, Scrooge Duck, whatever type of thing. And there's his signature. And there it is on the cover. Old Scrooge looks kind of pissed, doesn't he? Like he's ready to kick somebody's ass. I got 4 issues of Sandman Mystery Theater that was drawn by, I think it was the artist, Guy Davis, the artist of this book. The lighting makes it hard to see that, but I got 4. I know one's got to have easier to read one with the camera. Sandman Mystery Theater was the Sandman from the old DC Justice Society of America, the 1940s Sandman, trench coat, the fedora, the gas mask, and the gas gun, and all that cool stuff. My favorite incarnation of the Sandman, and it was more street level mysteries, and each issue was 4 issues long. The story had 4 issues. I had a whole bunch of them. I brought the first 4, which is the first story arc, and he was nice enough to sign it. There's issue 2. Not a bad, there's a good take on the signature. A good view of it. Here's issue 3. And there it is. That's a great one. There. Had that done in 1997 apparently. And here's issue 4. And there's the signature. These aren't in any particular order. I just kind of grabbed them out of those and made us, from the collection. This is an issue of Rat Fink Comics. You might remember the character, you might not. Rat Fink was a character created by Ed Big Daddy Roth, or as he was simply known, Big Daddy Roth, in magazines in the first earlier part of the 60s, more like the middle part, 64, 65, 66, in magazines of cartoons that were hot rod cartoons, car-based cartoons for the most part, that were sold to a kid audience, perfect for someone like me who was 14 in 1965. With the, let's see if I can find a good picture of the character. With sophisticated artwork like that, how can you go wrong, right? Now, Ed Roth was not connected with the actual artwork of this book, but his company did it. There it says Big Daddy Roth Presents, Rat Fink. His company did this, and around 1993, he was at a car show, And it was interesting because he never, it was like they didn't pay him to go there, but he always got a free booth because people would come to see him. I went to see Elvira for that show, but you know, she was a guest there. And here it is, his signature. So signed, an autograph from a person who entertained me with many, many magazines back when, drawn them, back when I was like 14 or 15 years old. Here's a Green Lantern that is signed by the writer, Darryl Banks, the penciler. Here's ElfQuest. Some of you may know what it is, some may not, which is like a lot of these. And the two artists, the writers rather of the book, Terry Beatty and Wendy Lee, were at a convention when I was at, where I get most of these done, got most of these done, and they both signed it. Terry Beatty also drew a lot of the classic Scary Monsters magazine covers in the last few years. I don't know if he still does or not. I don't know if how many of you are gamers, but there's a comic book here, Knights of the Dinner Table, which is about people sitting around the table doing pencil and paper role-playing games, much like D&D or other games like that, done by Jolly Blackburn. And he was at a Gen Con convention here in Indianapolis one year, and at his booth, and there it is, Jolly Blackburn signed it. Here's a 4-issue miniseries called Predator Race Wars, put out by Dark Horse. And where's the credits? The inker of it was there. Rick Bryant. And there it is. He signed all 4 issues of that for me. The miniseries was basically, if memory serves me correct, and it still does on occasion, a predator, or maybe more, I haven't read it for a long, long time, gets involved. Well, that one's not hard to see the signature, but it's there. Gets involved in a race riot in prison of some sort, or something like that. These are 2 comic books that are written by someone, and I got to give a shout out because he's a cool dude, and he's a good artist. Willie Peppers. Willie Peppers drew this. And this for me, or drew these and signed them, and signed. He didn't draw the comics for me, but he drew the comics and he signed those for me. And he used to show up at comic book shows here, and he used to do sketches for, you know, for fans, make a few dollars that way. So that's pretty cool. I'll save this one for last. I'm not sure who these people were, but it's an issue of Legionnaires that was signed by pretty much just all the main contributors. Here's a Doctor Strange comic book that was either signed by, I think it was signed by David Quinn. David Quinn wrote it, Peter Gross drew it, but David Quinn, I think, signed this one. As you can see, it's not exactly the most coherent signature, but, you know, it keeps, yeah, there, I see a D. That's got to be David Quinn. I think that's a D. Anyway, it keeps people from forging their name on checks, doesn't it? Last but not least, and this is kind of cool. Sammy Terry, the local, has put out a comic book with sort of a like a thing where his character, that Sammy Terry, is an Indiana legend. And I'm sure past that. Sammy Terry was Bob Carter back in the 60s, and he hosted horror movies with the costume and the whole act and the whole shtick. And did it into the 80s. And after that, was popular in personal appearances and did the occasional repeat TV show, you know, his TV specials and whatnot. His health got bad. He passed away, unfortunately. But before he passed away, he asked his son to take over. Bob Carter was the original Sammy Terry, and he asked his son Mark to take over, and his son made those appearances and keeps the Sammy Terry thing going and has turned it into an interesting brand. So he put out a comic book that it's like he introduces horror stories. At a convention I got this. This is a picture of him from in the back, and he's on the cover as well. And Mark Carter in costume was at the convention, and he signed that for me. So it's a very special part of the collection too. He didn't do anything with the actual comic book itself. Someone else drew it, someone else wrote it, as far as I know. But it's about him, somewhat. So, those are the comic books. Hello everybody. I have a video I'm making here showing some of the autographed DVDs I've gotten over the years. I got The Terminator, and signed by Michael Biehn, the actor who played Reese. I got a copy of Frankenhooker, signed by Patty Mullen, who played Frankenhooker, who played the reconstructed prostitute with other parts, and well, if you saw it, you know what I'm talking about, and it's hard to explain. It was her. I got Tony Todd signed Hatchet 2. Camille Caton, I Spit on Your Grave. Tony Todd signed Candyman. And I got Tony Todd and Tom Savini signed this copy of Night of the Living Dead. Here's Roddy Piper's signature on the Roddy Piper story. Rob Van Dam signed his WWE DVD. And Graydon Clark signed the copy of Satan's Sadists. He was the biker that was into the dope and drugs and stuff. He'd been in a bunch of other Al Addison movies. Later he became a director. And I'm not too sure if he was a director on this one or not. No, he wasn't a director on it. Here's Texas Chainsaw Massacre, the beginning, signed by Andrew Borkowski. I think I got his name right. Apologies if I don't. Who played Leatherface. Dan Coscarelli signing Bubba Hotep. Dan Coscarelli directed that as well as Phantasm. A Barbara Steele signed copy of Black Sunday. Here's a Reggie Bannister signed copy of Phantasm. David Hess signed copy of The Last House on the Left. It's hard to make out. There, it might be hard to make out, but there's a David Carradine signed copy of Kill Bill Volume 2. He signed it in a light-colored ink. Lloyd Kaufman signed one of his movies that his company put out or released. They didn't make, I don't think. Killer Condoms, that was the movie. A Linnea Quigley signed copy of Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers. A Linnea Quigley autographed copy of Return of the Living Dead. A Linnea Quigley signed copy of Night of the Demons. Here's Linnea Quigley and Ginger Lynn's autographed copy of Vice Academy 2. Here's a Ginger Lynn adult film that she signed the cover for. Girls on Fire. If for those interested. Here's Night of the Living Dead, signed by the actor who played the sheriff, Johnny, and John Russo. And the last one I've got is a copy of Dawn of the Dead, signed by Tom Savini, and two of the zombies that were in it. One, the sweater zombie, that he's referred to sometimes, I think. He shows up quite a bit. And then the woman who's the zombie in the nurse uniform. And Ken Foree, who plays Roger. So, that is that, and I hope you enjoyed it.